James, and I am a homeschooled high school freshman, and I am also a part of the Greater Baltimore Urban League summer program. We will be interviewing community leaders and members of the Baltimore area and discussing their roles and perspectives on Baltimore's civil rights legacy and how youth can continue and contribute to the movement. Throughout your time influencing policy, what kinds of lobbying by organizations or young people made the most impact?
So I have been on the Washington scene now since 1997 when I arrived in DC. And I arrived in DC as a Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Fellow for 9 months. And then I was invited to join the staff of the House Ways and Means Committee. And then I was invited to become Mr. Rangel. He was a former congressman from New York, the Harlem area, actually. I was invited to become his AA, which is an administrative assistant and chief of staff. So, when working on the Hill, I noticed that the most effective, outside of corporations, by the way, because, corporations are very effective in terms of buying high-powered lobbyists to go in and then buy Congress people who will then turn over their legislative powers to the lobbyists to write the bills. But in terms of nonprofit organizations and advocacy organizations, I've seen, organizations that are highly organized, who walk the halls of Congress, who have personal relationships with members of Congress, who produce sign-on letters and other materials to help educate members of Congress, be very effective. I've also seen, outside agitators like, radio hosts who tell all of their listeners to call Congress. And then all of a sudden, the congressional switchboards are shut down. And then the powerful members of Congress are trying to figure out, well, who's telling them to call us? Tell them to quit, tell them to quit. We'll do whatever they want. And I've seen those kinds of tactics, which are disruptive tactics, work as well. So, it all depends on the strategy, and the inside-outside game works. Sometimes it's walking the halls of Congress and being an insider, and sometimes it's protest and disruption.
How do you see the advancement of social, economic, political, and cultural climate manifesting itself differently today than it did in the past?
Okay. I see that it has it takes on a different voice, and there's a different narrative today than there was in the past of the civil rights movement. In the civil rights movement, there was very little opportunity and room for advancement for economic growth, educational growth, and in the political sector as well. It has consistently been an effort to muffle or smother the voice of Blacks and minorities in this country. And I see now where we still have that fight. There is still a very serious issue with systemic racism. But I love the power and the empowerment that our youth and millennials have this day, where they're continuing to make it very clear that you're not going to shut me up. I appreciate our ancestors and the foundation that our ancestors have laid for us. However, we are going to continue to fight and have a voice. So I'm very much moved by the millennials and the youth in this time, where they've taken an active role in activism, more so with economic empowerment, where they have continued to really expand the platform of entrepreneurship. I've never seen this many entrepreneurs start out at 15 years old and continue to build that platform and open the open the platform and the opportunities for entrepreneurship for our young Black youth now. So I see that change that has happened different in the past. I think the climate is starting to get a little more turbulent. However, we've had the ability to voice it more. You know, there's many more platforms that give us the opportunity to get our voice heard, not just in our little community. You know, you have social media that's used for many sectors, but right now we have the capacity to use social media to really, I guess, build momentum and also spread our word nationally. So we're not just in our neighborhoods and in our little communities. So that is probably the difference that I see as far as the advancement of economic and cultural climate change from that of our civil rights era, I would say.
What opportunities do the youth have in the civil rights movement today?
Social media can be, and it has become a platform that has been quite negative, and how so many individuals really live their lives on social media. You know, a lot of things that are on social media are false. Everything on there is not reality, is not life. But unfortunately, trying to nurture and trying to build the proper culture for our youth has been very difficult, because while we're instilling these specific values in you as young Black people, minority individuals, and some in marginalized communities, it is often being tainted with the falsehood of social media. So social media in that aspect has really dampened the mindset, the values, the culture, and I would say integrity and ethics of our community and our the way we live today. In a positive aspect for social media, you have the capabilities to expand your capacity. You know, we can speak today and our word can be heard in Los Angeles at the same time, or Atlanta at the same time. And a lot of our youth are starting to follow a lot of our civil rights movement, a lot of our social media influencers that discuss what the movement means today and how they can get involved. The best thing that I love is that I believe social media was the foundation for a lot of your age and millennials to really become the leaders of the civil rights movement today. I'm extremely excited where our movement is going, and that it actually has been led by people your age.
Feel like Baltimore right now is growing and building like a new culture for itself by like investing in its youth and putting us at the forefront of like conversations that concern us in our education. So yeah. How have you worked to secure civil rights for individuals in Baltimore through your career?
Yeah, for me, actually, I have been an active participant in many of these things, right? For my involvement in being a co-founder of 300 Men March, for me being even before I was a legislator, as a young community organizer working on the campus of Coppin State, helping young men and young women there fight for a better education for them when their education needs weren't being met. Of course, working with youth programs and other things. But when you think about the policies that I've done myself over the years, being one of the first folks from the city to go down to Annapolis to testify on significant police reform, from opening up internal affairs complaints to the public, from passing the city's equity law, to being on the body camera work group for the city. Those are just some of the things that I've done in my time as of before and now, with the creation of me creating the city's first chief equity officer in Dana Moore, having her guide and going to be looking through the implementation of my equity law to make sure that the city is budgeting in a more equitable way, that we're looking at racial equity, gender equity, economic equity in everything we do. That over the long term will be, when I'm all said and done, and Christian and you and one of these other young folks are sitting in my chair, it's what folks will say, that's where the city turned the corner in as respects to looking at how it operates in a better way.
No, that's a perfect answer. And I can't wait until the time where our youth and the leaders of tomorrow do have like the opportunity to really execute and build the best world that we can. But that starts with today and like building it brick by brick and really inspiring all the people that we can right now. So yeah. And my next question to you would be, what would you want people to remember most about the African Americans' conditions in America in the civil rights movement?
Wow, that's a great question. The first thing is very simple. For those who don't know, Black people built this country. Black people gave their blood, sweat, tears, everything to make this country what it is today. This country does not exist in this fashion without Black people, and it is always fallen on Black folks to advocate and advance our own causes. And whenever America has been in a dire state or on the verge of something crazy, it's been Black people that got it out of it. When you think about elections, it's been Black women that have saved us from electing people that shouldn't be in elected office. And we have to fight for the progress that we want to see in the world like no other group. And we know what comes to that. But I think that folks have to really understand that, and we have to be open and in their face about it, because many folks just simply don't believe or want to believe that you do not have American history without Black history.
No, that's completely true. And I do completely agree with that. I saw a post earlier today, which was like, they're teaching slavery as a part of Black history and teaching and not teaching it as a part of white history and stuff like that. So they basically want us to think that our roots began in slavery and stuff. And this is some concept that I'm really even learning at Morgan State University right now. They always want us to think that our roots are below, so that we automatically think that we're inferior, but we come from kings and like long kingdoms and stuff like that. And that's where we truly originate from.
Could you go more in detail about your role in environmental sustainability?
The environment has always been important to me. I've always loved to be a part of nature. But as a teenager and as a college student, I became aware of the connection between the fight for civil rights and human rights and environmental issues. And what that often meant was that the environmental issues were in the places where Black people lived as a result of segregation, as a result of racism and white supremacy. And so I began to, learn about the work of people like Dr. Ben Chavis, the late Damu Smith, and the late Connie Tucker, who were all Black freedom fighters who were fighting for civil rights and human rights for Black people, for justice for Black people, and who saw the connection between poor environmental conditions that led to high levels of lead exposure for Black children, poor air quality for Black neighborhoods and communities, toxic dumping in Black communities. And so that kind of sparked my interest and my awareness, and knowing that environmental racism was part of the fight against racism, and that we had to fight for environmental and climate justice. And even until today, we continue to advocate for climate justice and for an end to environmental racism through the Baltimore NAACP. And one of the things that I have been telling companies as of late over the last couple of years is that the green economy, the economy that's based on improving the environment, the economy that's based on creating sustainability, so solar power, wind power, electric cars, and all of those ways of powering our lives that don't include fossil fuels, but do include renewables. The green economy is a new economy. It's a new way of doing things. And we have to be intentional about making sure that we don't incorporate old ways of doing things. We don't incorporate white supremacy. We don't incorporate exclusion. We don't incorporate discrimination into this new economy. So what does that look like? That looks like in a green economy, Black people and other people of color have to have their fair share of the profits, their fair share of the jobs, their fair share of the opportunities to do business with other companies in the green economy. And it's not enough for companies to say, we tried, but we couldn't find any qualified people. No, you have to be intentional. So just like you identify the challenges in the market for any business, one of the challenges that you identify is making sure that there is equity in the green economy, which means that there are plenty of opportunities for returning citizens, for Black people who have been incarcerated as a result of an unjust system. In Maryland, 77% of the people who are incarcerated in Maryland are people of African descent. We make up about 30% of the population of the state. And so that means that for years, this state has been taking the Black people who could be productive workers and competition in the workforce and in the entrepreneurial space and incarcerating them and using those Black bodies to fuel the carceral state. And now we're saying that, one, we have to put an end to mass incarceration of Black people, but two, for all those people who are survivors of the carceral state, all of those people who are returning, we have to equip them with the skills to participate in a green economy. And we have to demand that the companies that come into our communities saying that they want to do what's right for the environment, they also have to do what's right for Black people. And so that's part of the advocacy that we are doing now.
In America history, what has changed the most for you over the last 30 years?
The reality is that the more that you're exposed to different things, I think that it brings about greater opportunity. You can see a little bit more clear, see a little bit different. I play chess, Keon, and I love to be able to see the different moves or kind of think a little bit ahead of those that I may be on a
Strategy.
From that standpoint. Yep, exactly, strategy. But I think that some of the biggest pivotal points in our country, probably in, with civil rights, obviously, around that same time where you had Martin Luther King, you had A. Philip Randolph, you had Malcolm, you had a number of these folks that were fighting just to improve our community and the conditions from our community. And I should say, like, people like Dorothy Heights, to make sure that we have some women in there, Mary McLeod Bethune, to make sure that we have some women in there. The other piece that I would think about is just in reference to, and this is very interesting, I got this portrait in the back, but it symbolizes the first African Americans that were elected to some form of office, and this happened after Reconstruction. I think this was a very pivotal moment just in our time as a country. Unfortunately, if you know the history of it, like the early 1900s, you then saw all of those African Americans that were elected at that time removed from office in some capacity. So we had a United States Senator, we had a number of Congress, we had a number of state legislator holders, but this was all wiped out strategically from that standpoint because of the courage of some that didn't have, and because elections also do matter in some of the things that happened after the election of people like Abraham Lincoln, and then after Ulysses Grant and things of that nature. So that lack of courage that took place. So I think that like civil rights is obviously a big one. Reconstruction is a big one. I would also say in this time that we stand in the legislature, this was probably the best year that I had in the Maryland legislature, but this was also the legislative year of a number of folks. We cannot say that we've ever had a first Black speaker outside of Speaker Adrian Jones. I think that when we look at police challenges and public safety across this country, Maryland, we can say that we had put on a law on the books that has us raised in a number of conversations and a leader in the state. From that standpoint, when we think about what the work that we did around the Kerwin Commission and making sure that those young people that are in concentrated areas of poverty, ESOL students, career readiness, that this is Maryland was leading on this issue. When we think about school construction and investing $2 billion, injecting $2 billion into our economy around school construction across the state of Maryland, and 400+ million coming to the city of Baltimore to be able to work on our high schools, I think that this is a very, very pivotal time in the moment. And I think that we should take advantage of each and every day. And one of my mantras is, Keon, to make every day count.
You were talking about encouraging, young African American folks. So do you have anything, you would tell them?
I would just tell them, follow their dreams. You know what I mean? Don't let anybody define you. You got to define yourself. So just follow your dreams and prepare yourself so that you'll be prepared to do what you're trying to do in life. I would like for more young people to go into business of their own. But some people are not cut out for that. But it's nothing like having your own and being able to grow your own. But always care about your community. Try to bring somebody from. Don't be the only one. A lot of people say, well, you were the first to do this, first to. No, I might have been the first, but I always try to bring other people along with me, so I wouldn't be left on somebody say, well, Mr. Henderson was the first. No, I just opened the door. There are many folks who have come behind me, and I can name them all basically that have been part of my. I like to call them part of my group. So don't think that you making it by yourself. You can't make it by yourself. But please always look to try to bring somebody else along behind you. It's no fun being the only one in the room.